I'm afraid it's a very bleak welcome I offer you today, ladies and gentlemen. I have pulled out all the stops, warning you of the coming financial and economic hell we are about to enter. I truly could not have done more. My conscience is clear on that. Anyway, it's Friday, October the 12th, 2018, and I, Richard Martin, am talking to you from Malaysia. The International Monetary Fund has warned the world's economy is at risk of another massive financial crisis. The IMF cited the failure of governments to protect the system from reckless behaviour and initiate reforms to prevent the coming onslaught, while others see the global debt as the main concern. Of course, it isn't just the failure to regulate under threat of violence causing the problem, since governments will not regulate their own spending habits. Global debts, both national and private, will be a major cause for concern that should not be overlooked. According to The Guardian, global debt levels are well above those at the time of the last crash in 2008. Because of the high levels of debt across the board, the risk remains that parts of the financial system could trigger a global panic, the Washington-based lender of last resort said. Rising interest rates could very well usher in a crash. Much has been done to shore up the reserves of banks in the last 10 years and to put in place more rigorous oversight of the financial sector. But, quote-unquote, risks tend to rise during good times, such as the current period of low interest rates and subdued volatility, and those risks can always migrate to new areas. The IMF added that supervisors must remain vigilant to these unfolding events. The growth of global banks such as JP Morgan and the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China to a scale beyond that seen in 2008, leading to fears that they remain too big to fail, also registers on the IMF's radar. The former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown said last month that the world economy was, quote-unquote, sleepwalking into a future crisis, and risks were not being tackled now. We are in a leaderless world. Speaking this week before the fund's forthcoming annual meeting, taking place next week on the Indonesian island of Bali, the IMF's head, Christine Lagarde, said she was concerned that the total value of global debt in both the public and private sectors has rocketed by 60% in the decade since the financial crisis, to reach an all-time high of $182 trillion. That comes from The Guardian newspaper. The problem seems always to come back to the high levels of global debt, which cannot be fixed by governments, as many suggest, because they themselves are quickly contributing to the suicide of the US. Once upon a time, at least members of the Tea Party would stand up and say something. But these days, nobody seems to care that America's future is systematically destroyed. Republicans have been in control of both houses of Congress, but America's debt problems just continue to get worse and worse. The truth is that the budgets that have been passed since Donald Trump became president are simply slightly revised Obama budgets. The Republicans have allowed the Democrats to have their way time after time, and it has been absolutely disgusting to watch. In 8 of the past 11 fiscal years, the US national debt has risen by more than $1 trillion, and the US national debt is now sitting at an all-time record high of $21.52 trillion. Lagarde said that the build-up of global government debts made developing world governments and companies more vulnerable to higher US interest rates, which could trigger a flight of funds and destabilize their economies. Quote unquote, this should serve as a wake-up call. In a separate analysis as part of the IMF's annual economic outlook, it warned that, quote unquote, large challenges loom for the global economy to prevent a second Great Depression. Over 20 major retailers have filed for bankruptcy since the beginning of last year, and in 2018 we may break the all-time record for annual store closings that was established just last year. We are in the midst of the worst retail apocalypse in American history, and it appears to be picking up speed as retail giants such as Sears, Penney, Brookstone and Mattress Firm spiral towards bankruptcy. We live at a time when the middle class is being systematically destroyed, and so US consumers simply do not have as much discretionary income as they once did. Many large retailers believed that things would eventually turn around, and they've been fighting very hard to survive. But now time has run out for quite a few of them. Let's look at a few. Mattress Firm. Everyone knew that Mattress Firm was in deep trouble, but it still surprised many people when it was announced that they are officially planning to file for bankruptcy. The following comes from Reuters, quote unquote. Mattress Firm, Inc., the largest US mattress retailer, is preparing to file for bankruptcy protection as soon as this week, as it seeks to exit costly store leases and shore up its business, people familiar with the matter said on Tuesday. Mattress Firm has approximately 3,000 brick-and-mortar locations, and as those stores close down, those abandoned buildings are going to be giant eyesores on street corners all over America. Brookstone. Back in the 1980s, it seemed like Brookstone had an outlet in every mall in America. But now Brookstone has filed for bankruptcy and all remaining mall stores will be shut down. Brookstone will close its remaining 101 mall stores. Brookstone, the mall and airport seller, best known for massage chairs, quirky gadgets and travel luggage, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in federal court on Thursday. It was Brookstone's second bankruptcy round in 4 years. Sears. Sears has been shutting down stores for years, but until now they've never admitted that bankruptcy was on the horizon. But now time has run out, and emergency measures are required if Sears is to survive. The following comes from CNN, quote unquote. Sears is running out of time to fix the board, its problems, the CEO says. Eddie Lampert controls most of the company's shares through his hedge fund. He told the board on Monday that it must address, quote unquote, significant near-term constraints in its cash position. Of course, Sears is still not actually using the term bankruptcy, But even CNN is admitting that Eddie Lampert used, quote-unquote, language that suggested the company could be forced out of business. Lampert did not use the word bankruptcy, but he raised the possibility that creditors could be wiped out, a process that often takes place in bankruptcy court without immediate action. He also said it was in the best interest of stakeholders to, quote-unquote, accomplish this as a going concern, language that suggested the company could be forced out of business. Those who have been listening to the wake-up call for a long time know that I have repeatedly stated that Sears is going to zero. Now we appear to be on the precipice of that actually happening, and it's a very sad day for America indeed. J.C. Penney. Speaking of retailers that are going to zero, J.C. Penney is absolutely drowning in debt and has a very dismal prognosis for the future. Leaderless, $4 billion in debt, and with a stock price below $2, the besieged retailer faces an uncertain fate after posting its latest round of dismal earnings. Mark Cohen, the Director of Retail Studies at the Columbia Business School and a former CEO of Sears Canada and other department stores, had this to say, quote-unquote, "They're in a leaky boat that will eventually sink. The prognosis for the future is not happiness." In the end, J.C. Penney is not going to survive, and so America will have to shop elsewhere for substandard clothing at inflated prices. Bed, Bath and Beyond. Nobody's suggesting that bankruptcy is imminent for Bed, Bath and Beyond, but if they continue to have disastrous sales results, it won't be too long before they are on the chopping block too. The struggling retailer said on Wednesday that it was bringing on 2 top management consulting firms to help it cut costs and improve its merchandise. CEO Stephen Temares did not name the firms. The housewares retailer needs help. Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond plunged nearly 25% last Thursday to their lowest level since March 2000 because of awful sales during the previous quarter. We're moving into the most critical time of the year for retailers. Most troubled chains will hang on through the next 3 months, but once we get to January and February, we will see many of them give up the fight for good. Meanwhile, some of the retailers that are still doing okay are warning that America's trade war with China will likely mean much higher prices for consumers. Walmart and Target are among the large retailers and food companies that have sent letters to U.S. Trade Ambassador Robert Lighthizer warning that proposed tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods would hurt consumers and American businesses. Walmart's letter, dated September the 6th, focuses on what it says will be the repercussions of the tariffs, which would apply to goods like food and beverages, personal care products like shampoo, detergents, motor vehicles, and paper goods like napkins. Of course, U.S. consumers cannot exactly afford higher prices at this point. U.S. consumers have been spending more than they are earning month after month, and they are making up the difference by going into ever-increasing amounts of debt. This is not what a healthy economy looks like. If we had a healthy economy, the middle class would be growing and retailers would be thriving. But instead, the vacancy rate at US shopping malls just hit the highest level in 6 years. The vacancy rate at metro and regional malls around the United States hit 8.6% last quarter, the highest since the end of 2012, according to data released on Monday by real estate research firm REIS, R-E-I-S. Back then, the economy was still working its way out of a recession, and an excess of malls had been built in the previous decades. Retail vacancies peaked at 9.4% during the middle of 2011. Things are not getting better for the US economy. We continue to see numbers that we have not seen since the last recession, and it appears that things will continue to deteriorate as we head into 2019.